This is Behind the Mic, local and worldwide. Interviews with athletes, entertainers, and you. A talk show that will engage, inform, and take you to the edge, maybe even over. Now, from the Big Z studios in suburban Chicago, here's the host of Behind the Mic, Gary Zahara.
Thanks, Mitch. My next guest's law enforcement career spanned 26 and a half years from the Cook County Jail to the Fugitive Apprehension Unit. In 1995, he joined the CPD as a patrol officer in the 12th District. A quick 2-year stint in TAC led to him spending his last 18 in the Bureau of Organized Crime. Then a leave of absence would alter his career path and put his mark on the 12-year running police drama Chicago PD. Producer Brian Luce joins me behind the mic right after this.
Team Keys and your financial services division manager, Whitley Brooks Edmondson, specializing in affordable insurance and investments. Call 248-403-0919 to book your appointment. Slugmaster, turning batters into hitters. Log on to slugmaster.com for a dealer near you.
As a technical advisor, he made sure the authenticity and, most importantly, the integrity of the CPD came through the eye of the camera in every scene. And as he says it, he went from the bottom of the call sheet, number 250, to number 3. Not bad for a kid from Bridgeport. Please welcome the heartbeat of Chicago PD, Brian Luce. Hey, Brian, how are you, sir?
Really good. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Like I had Patty and Loris on, and they said so many good things about you. And, of course, you and I had a conversation. You were gracious enough to talk to me about how to join your school 2 years ago when I was doing background for PD. So I always wanted to have you on because, you know, as much as there's bosses above you and how you do the show, everybody knew that you're the man putting this show together. You're the heartbeat. So how's everything going? First of all, I know it's been almost 13 weeks since you had your life-changing health scare. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been back to work 2 months. I was only out 2 weeks. So, yeah, it worked out really great. Had a lot of people behind me, a lot of prayers, a lot of people from the neighborhood, a lot of people in the industry. Had a bunch of bosses fly in. They were at the hospital on the side of my bed. It'll make me want to cry, to be honest with you, the amount of love that I had and the people that were behind me. And
it's a pretty shitty club for you and I to share. We have the same thing. I had a little heart attack. It wasn't a I'm coming for you, Elizabeth, but it was enough for me to get a couple of stints in. For your situation, was it sudden or was it gradual?
No, it was I had cardiac arrest. So I have the way the doctor said, you ever have a car with bad electrical problem? That was me. 1 minute we were watching a horrible movie called Civil War with 3 of my kids and 2 of their girlfriends. And the next minute we were in the car and we were off to go get some ice cream at my daughter's place, a little joint in Bridgeport called Sugar Shack. I stepped out of the car. I told my wife, I don't feel too good. I got back in, and the next thing you know, I was dead. I joke around and say, it's a good thing that my son was dating a nurse and not a dancer, because she jumped in the truck and she beat on me for 6 minutes while I was dead. CFD showed up. Thank God. They pretty much saved me too. They pulled me out of the truck. They hit me 4 times with the defibrillator. And my soon-to-be daughter-in-law basically told my wife it's pretty much over in so many words. She turned her around, and on the 5th time I came alive. And then they rushed me into UIC, some incredible doctors. None of this I knew. I didn't feel anything. And I died 23 hours later, and I was dead for 2 minutes. Sad part was my family was there for the entire thing. Soon as the industry knew, my partner, really cool guy by the name of Angelo Raimondo, he took over set for me. He was a guy who's in training. He's another guy with I think he's got 30 years of service with the Chicago Police Department. Wonderful young man. I had him in training at the end of last year, but then he jumped right in and he took care of me. But before I know it, 5 days later in a coma, I woke up. I guess I was swearing a lot. And my wife told the doctors I was going to be naughty, and I was. I tried to rip everything out. And 2 weeks later, I was back to work. So it's
Wow.
pretty crazy, yeah.
Hell of a story, Brian. So it's not. I'm looking at when I heard the story, and I talked to Patty, and I talked to Leroyce, and of course I saw you on your Instagram stories. It was an electrical issue.
Yeah.
Wasn't had anything to do with you being a cop for so long and running at 1,000 miles an hour.
No, it's funny because the week before I died, let's just say, Voight came up to me. We become dear friends, 12 years. We're probably super, super, super close, probably too close. We're like brothers. And he told me I didn't look too good. So he told me he wanted me to go see his doctor. And I went on Monday and I died on that Sunday after the doc said I was good. So everything checked out. My heart's strong. I smoked for a long time. I quit last Thanksgiving, so I'm coming on my year, which is phenomenal. And it just came out of nowhere. So Jason Begay was at my bed. Matter of fact, Jason was the first guy I called when I woke up. He touched me with a story a long time ago. Jason also died, and Jason seen the light. And my problem was I didn't see a light. I didn't see anything. If I have to like tell you how it was, I would say it was probably the best 15-minute nap I ever had in my life, not knowing I was gone for 6 days.
Wow.
Yeah, I see nothing, and it scared me. It scared the hell out of me. I'm a religious guy. I believe in God. I pray every day. I thank him for what I have, and I ask for forgiveness for what I've done. But at the end of the day, yeah, he was my first call, and his words were simple. He was like, they just weren't ready for you. And I told him I'll take that, and I cried. And next thing you know, he showed up. He hugged me, and my family was there, and we moved on.
And of course, it's no surprise you were taping from you're on Instagram Live or putting up live videos from your bed in the hospital. I'm sure your wife was not pleased with that.
Yeah, she'll get over it. The poor
Typical,
woman.
typical Luch putting stuff on Instagram. No matter what's going on, you're still going to be going live. So I mean, that's a hell of a story. So let's bring it back up. But I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad you're healthy. And sure enough, yeah, it's not ready for your time. You got more work to do on the show. Season 12 in full swing. You got 5 episodes in the can. Time flies when you're having fun. I mean, this show has taken off. How many have you had in the can? How many are in the can now before you guys come back from your little break?
I don't know the exact number. I think altogether I've done 230 episodes. So prior to this, I was brought in by the 3 wise men, if you want to know the beginning, which is pretty crazy, is Matt Olmstead, Derek Haas, and Michael Brandt were the creators of Michael Brandt and Derek Haas were the creators of Chicago Fire, and they brought on Matt Olmstead, who's a legend in the industry, and he started with PD. And out of the blue, I was called by an individual by the name of Chikarotis, who started out as a tech advisor, who is now a writer producer for Chicago Fire, who's a legend on the Chicago Police Department. I mean, the Chicago Fire Department. He's just the salt of the earth. He's just a guy you look up to, a man who is revered, basically, in the industry and on the job. Just a, cut from a different cloth kind of guy. And he told me these guys want to talk to you. And I was like, yeah, it ain't for me. He's like, no, come talk to him. So I gave it a shot. I met him for breakfast. It was kind of funny. They said they wanted to see the city, the dark sides and the light sides of it. So first place I brought him to was a club of mine, the old neighborhood Italian American club. There's some guys that were in and out that are really good people. The club's got a lot of cops and a lot of guys that used to do some things that were sideways, whatever. That's their business. And those 3 gentlemen spent about 5-6 hours talking with them, and they had a fabulous time talking about organized crime and things that happen in the city and stories. And ultimately, some of those stories hit the screen. It was pretty cool. They asked me to come to LA. I went to LA. They put me in a room. I talked for many, many hours. And next thing you know, some scripts started coming at me. And I started out just working with Voight, training Voight. And at that time, it was just Antonio, guns, close quarter combat, that kind of stuff, walking, talking. But I think mostly being there and sharing the stories and how vulnerable you could be. And it's okay to cry if you're a cop, and it's okay to be upset, and it's okay to be scared, like all those things. And tomorrow's not promised, and you want to be the guy taking off your boots at the end of the night and not your partner. Basically, I think that's what impacted it the most. They were on fire for 5, 6, maybe 7 episodes, and then Chicago Fire would be episode 123, which was the episodic Chicago PD, and they brought in some core people, and I was able to train them for about 2 weeks. What I'm fortunate is I always like to kid around, but it's the truth. I'm rich in friendship across the board. I surrounded myself with some hardworking coppers. no matter what, whether it was K9 to Phil Klein, the ex-superintendent, I would be able to pick up the phone and a lot of shit I don't know. So I would call and they would help me get it right. I've talked to over 1,000 cops in the last 12 years that are just gave their heart and their soul and met with policemen and told stories, and it's worked. So we got picked up. Next thing you know, we got another crew, and the story Atwater's a really cool story. If you know it, did he tell you about it?
Yeah, he told me about it, and it's another reason. We'll get into that down the line. Yeah, it was an interesting story on why he wanted to stay, because initially he didn't think he wanted to come onto the show, but he talked about your presence and how you talked to him and changed his ways, and he speaks very highly of you. Hopefully you get a chance to watch that interview that I had with him. But before you donned the badge and took a seat in the producer's chair, talk about growing up in Bridgeport.
So I originally lived with my mom and my dad were divorced when I was about 5 years old, but I'd be able to come to the neighborhood during the summertime when my dad had custody of me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was incredible. The neighborhood's amazing. It's so close knit. People out on their stoops. It's old Italian, old Irish. Daly's old neighborhood. It's my favorite place in the world. You have Armour Square, you have Bridgeport, but the people that live there, you grow up together from driving a big wheel to you're in your own four-wheeler. You know what I mean? Like it's amazing. And my kids have the same friends that they had when they were in kindergarten all the way through. And my father was an old school Chicago cop. He died on the job. He had a duty-related death through cancer. He was a sniper. He worked 22 years. He was a Vietnam vet. He is who I always wanted to be, my biggest hero. And I was fortunate enough to be able to wear the same uniform as he did.
Any chance, I ask this everybody, and I keep repeating this question over and over again to anybody who comes on the show, whether they have a career or not. I mean, was there an opportunity for you to play sports in high school, or did you just want to hang out with the boys?
I wasn't a good sport. I was always fighting. I was not good. I'll be honest with you. I got thrown out of school freshman year, taken away from my mom freshman year, came to live with my father, got through 3 years of school, was not invited back, ended up getting my GED. I was not good. I was running the streets of Chicago to hustle. I had
What high school, Luch? Talk to us. What high school?
St. Mary's a perpetual help because De La Salle was not having it. Yeah.
They did not want you to be a meteor, huh? No?
No. I wasn't cracked up to be a meteor. My 3 sons were meteors, and I'm very proud of that. And it kind of sucked because my whole life, all my best friends I grew up were all meteors, and all they would talk about is this coach and that coach and this brother and how they got in trouble and where they were going, and I was never part of it,
If you were to graduate De La Salle, what year would that have been?
I would have graduated St. Mary's in 85.
Okay. All right.
But,
so you're 3 ahead of me then. Okay. Because I played in De La Salle in my regional playoff game for basketball my junior year in high school in 1987. Went to Morton. So I grew up in Berwyn. So that's fun town. Berwyn's just
a lovely little spot.
Oh yeah, it's lovely now. It was great when I was growing up, and I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit more. But you talked about your dad. 1989 was kind of bittersweet to you. You started your law enforcement career. He passed away. How much influence did he have on your law enforcement career, if any?
I was in training with him when I was in diapers. Keep your head on a swivel. Always look. Don't be a victim. Be a lion, not a lamb. He taught me how to be a man and how to respect people. He also told me, kindness goes a long way. Just be good to people and they'll be good to you, and respect. And my father was a big jokester. Everybody loved him. He was a carpenter. He was a copper. His only problem was he could never say no. He spent every minute of the day trying to help somebody out or doing something and hanging out, busting balls and having fun. Am I allowed to swear? I forgot to ask.
You can do whatever you want, Luch.
I didn't know how it goes. So he was a bigger than life character. And he touched me a lot. When I was a Cook County sheriff, I had this captain who was not nice to me. He found out I was from Bridgeport and he didn't like me. And that captain was mean as hell to me. And the week that my dad was about to pass away, on a Wednesday, I told him, my dad's in hospice, and they gave me a call and said he's not going to make it. And that captain told me, go get in your uniform. You're going to do a uniform inspection. You're not going anywhere. and I went and had to put my uniform on, and I stood in front of him, and he handed me my badge, and he said, "Go see your father now." So this guy that I hated was the very reason why I was able to stand over my father's bed when he was dying and be in uniform. It was the sheriff's uniform and not the police uniform, but my father knew, he gave me a smile, and that night he passed away. Since then, anytime I got in a police car or a squad car, I heard a story about my father. He was crazy. He worked in mass transit, midnight tack team, dressing up like ladies, thefts to persons, and just he worked in what was called the war wagon and SOG back when the police were the police.
Mm-hmm.
You know how that goes. They were a little
Right.
heavy-handed. They didn't take no shit. I was kind of raised that way. The police department has changed, and it's changed to the better, and I'm happy for that. But old school policing and that type of stuff that's kind of cop my old man was. I remember waking up at 2 a.m. when all those guys were supposed to be on the street, and they'd be playing poker in my basement, trying to hide out from the cold, and then be back out on the street. Like they were crazy. They were the real deal.
I'm not putting you on the spot, but I know things have changed and policing has changed for the better. But for me, sometimes what I see going on, I think we need to bring back some of that old school policing. I don't know what your opinion is. I don't know if you want to step on any toes, but I mean, I see it on the news. I watch all the YouTube stuff. The policing has definitely, since I've been growing up, has changed, and I just, it's one of those things where it's an ever evolving thing. But again, I just think it's tilted too far to one side now because of what's been going on. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you that. Listen, I wouldn't give him a day back. I
Right.
spent 27 years as a cop. I loved every day, and I lost some guys and had some bad days. I cried. Brian Strauss. Yeah, there's a picture of him in Voight's office right now. He's a dear friend of mine. I went to the academy with him. He was my class commander. He was the salt of the earth guy too. He got shot in the head and he died. He was with two guys, Louis Estrada and Carlos Iglesias. He took my spot on the TAC team, and I went to narcotics, and he died. And these were the type of cops that I worked with. I mean, did the police do it right for many years? Yes. Did we do it wrong? Yes. It was a different type of policing. We were trained to do different stuff. And I don't want to say nothing bad about the department, because it gave me such a wonderful opportunity and such great memories. And I've done a lot of things I'm proud of. And like, if you looked in my phone, there's 22 judges that I've talked with, that I'd get warrants with, and 40 states attorneys. And being in the Bureau of Organized Crime, you're out there rocking and rolling 24/7. You didn't go home. You just didn't go home. You missed your daughter's birthday. You missed your son's baseball game. You didn't have time for that. You worked. I worked in a long-term narcotics team, and doing 22 hours and then going home, washing your ass and coming back was the norm. Like that's just what it was.
Right.
And we made a lot of good pinches, and we put away a lot of bad guys, and we worked mostly cartel type individuals in the long-term narcotics, moving in bulk kilograms and cash and guns and money and violent people. And it wasn't just us, it was that state's attorney who came out to the district, who rolled up, putting a ponytail in their hair, or tightening up their suit and their tie and going over our paperwork, and then waking up a judge at 2 a.m. Anna Depakopoulos is a wonderful state's attorney who helped me out for years. Peggy Champus, Kevin Hughes, like these guys were legends. Brian Sexton, they were right there with us in complex prosecution, and people just don't realize that. They always see that, oh, the cops kicked in the door, they made a good pinch, they seized a lot of dope, bad guys went to jail. That's not how it goes. There's a whole team of people. The undercovers on my team, the harm's way that they put themselves in to try to get information, cultivate CIs, and move around. I was fortunate enough to be able to learn every day, to be able to go to court every day, to go against some of the best defense attorneys out there that were complete gentlemen. They had a job to do, we had a job to do, and we all learned from each other. So, can you go out there and do it right? Yes. Is it easy to do wrong? Yes. I don't know how they took away, you can't chase somebody, and I think right now that the cops are under such a fine scope that it's just hard to be a cop. You could be a good guy, you could do your job, you could go out there, but the problem is if you do arrest somebody, it sure feels like you're the bad guy at the end of the day. And people say, these guys are all getting released back out on the street, and this is happening and that's happening. It is what it is. You got to be better than them. I'm I'm happy for the work that I did. I'm happy for the people that I worked for. I had what we call in a job, they're like princes, like a guy who's a prince. That Armando Ramirez, John Farrell, like guys that are on this job that are just absolute awesome bosses that backed us, and they made sure we were doing good. But when you fucked up, you got in trouble. I never got suspended for a day, but I caught beefs. I got beefs because handcuffs, people don't like them. They're not for comfort. You're going to jail. You're going to put in a beef on me. You know what I mean? You could call the Better Business Bureau. I don't know what to tell you. You did something wrong, and I'm going to treat you wrongly. You know what I mean? I'm not going to beat you. I'm not going to do any of that shit, but you're going to jail. And we don't make people happy. We make them unhappy.
You talk about judges that are friends. I grew up in Berlin, and the mayor of Berlin at the time when I was growing up, very good family friend of mine, Thomas Hett. I don't know. Do you remember Tom Hett? He was a judge down at 26 in California.
I remember the name. He never signed a warrant for me, but I know the name.
Good guy. He married my father in his second marriage. So yeah, I'm sure we know a lot of people. I know some guys on the Fugitive Task Force. I think when you were on it as well, and some guys down at Maybrook as well. In your 20 career on the CPD, you see obviously the best and the worst of the city. What stands out to you?
As the best and the worst?
Yeah.
Every neighborhood is beautiful. You know what I mean? People always try to say the city sucks, but it don't. It's awesome. You know what I mean? Like, I remember getting assigned to Inglewood, and people were like, "Oh, this is going to suck." And we worked what they called VRI, Violence Reduction Initiative, and they put you in a box, and you'd go in a box. It was a block by a block by a block, and you could drive around in circles for 8 hours and drive yourself crazy, or you could get your ass out of the seat and stretch out them polyesters. I had fun. I'd hop on a stoop and talk to somebody. I remember there was this old lady who brought me out Kool-Aid. That's all she had to offer me. I had more laughs that night, 7.5 hours I spent with this woman and everybody in her family hanging out and chilling. And my partner thought I was batshit crazy, but I don't give a fuck. I was policing. You know what I mean? I met people, right. She told me about the problems, and it wasn't about snitching or doing this. It was just about two people having a conversation. So I don't care what you say. Everywhere in this city, you find the pretty. You know what they say, go out and find the bad guys, find the good guys. How about that? How about being the police, go out there and find the good guys, because they're out there. They're in every community, and I think that's what the problem is we're so busy looking for the bad and not for the good that sometimes it gets in the way, and then we become the bad guys. There's a lot of cops that get on this job and they got the badge stands in front of them instead of them standing behind the badge. They say the gun's a penis extension. Excuse my language. It makes you a bigger man.
Right.
If you're born and bred in the city and you know who you are and you stand your ground, then you have nothing to prove, and you get out there and you treat people with respect. I made the mistake in the jail. I thought I was tougher than I was, and I ended up getting knocked out 7, 8 times. I learned how to fight in the jail. I worked in Division 1 and Division 6. I worked on a boulevard, Post 78. It was rough. You learn real fast. You ain't tough. Trust me. Sugar is a lot better than salt.
Oh yeah, Division 1, Division 6. Those are fun areas over there.
ABO, I couldn't tell you. My asshole was so tight it took a tractor to pull a needle out of it sometimes when I'd on my way to work. I pray every day, please God, get me out of here. Let me become a Chicago cop. It was scary, you know. Willie Lloyd was down there at the time. There was a bunch of other, GDs, BDs, all these different gangs, folks, people, this and that. I learned so much. And then when I went to the fugitive apprehension, I worked with this guy, Dave Diagardi, who was an ex-homicide detective, another guy, just phenomenal, all about, family and taking care of each other. And I learned there too. It's just, I feel like I was surrounded by such great men that all you could end up being is like a good copper. You're the real police. That's what they say. Oh, that motherfucker's the real police. Mm-hmm. When you walk into a district and guys know you and they want to shake your hand, and this is because you earned it. You were out there working, you treated guys right, and you brought them in when you had a real good pinch. You made them part of it. So I think that's all. Everybody wants to be a cop. You know what I mean? When you're playing and you're little, you want to be a cop. You know what I mean? You don't want to be a doctor or fucking train a dolphin. You want to be a cop. You played cops and robbers. Some guys ended up being robbers. I'm not mad at them. Their outfits are a lot cooler.
Right. You talk about we went to the city now. What's the best part of being a cop and the worst part?
Ooh. think the worst part is what you give up to be the police. I think that's all of those birthdays, all of those holidays, all of that stuff is what you give up. You end up finding more of a family being a policeman than you are at home. And you don't realize that until it's gone. And you don't have the opportunity to pick up your daughter anymore because she's 17. And, you know, I remember hearing a line like, you only get 18 summers with your kids. And if you're the police and you start out at 21, 23, 27, whatever, you're giving up probably 17 of those summers just to be the cop. You're not home. That's the worst part of it. The best part is the family that you have on the job, the people that you save, some that you don't save, you know, the things that the invisible scars, you know, that's the hard part. I know when I got remarried and I've been with my wife Erica for 10 years, and it was kind of tough on her because I'd scream at night. You know, they don't go away. They sneak up on you. You see things that you wish you hadn't seen. Poor little girl who was burning to death. A 14-year-old boy who died in my hands. A policeman who was shot and is laying right there, and screaming, and you don't know how to help him. You know, that shit will haunt you, and you could hold it in for as long as, but it leaks. It comes out. You know, and having an opportunity, I was lucky. Phil Klein grabbed me when I was in narcotics, and he sent me to the academy to teach search warrants and talk to people. And that was great because I was able to, like, okay, this is what I learned and this is what I want to show guys. And I didn't know anything about going through a door, breaching a door or anything. And there was two guys, Fitz and Capetto, that were from SORT, Special Operation, and they came in and they taught me everything. They killed me every day. They beat the shit out of me every day. But they worked for this guy, Fred Bossy, who was the head of HBT at the time, Hostage Barricade, which later became SWAT. And we learned from our own, you know. And Phil Klein was awesome. And then I did this class called Psych Workshop, which is a group of cops across the city that worked in the gray areas of policing. It was basically like improving. And you got a group of like 30 recruits, and those recruits, you would put them through the gray areas of policing. That was phenomenal. Probably the best time I ever had in the police department was messing with the kids. I loved it.
Best advice for you, Luch, in your law enforcement career?
Best advice I ever got?
Yeah.
Boy. Best advice. I know Phil Klein would take pictures of everything, and when I drove, he was a superintendent, and I drove him for like 28 days, and it was phenomenal. And the best advice I got was, don't forget what you have today. You know, and it was being the police, and it was standing there, whether you're working at Taste of Chicago, messing with people and having fun, or locking up 22 gangbangers and bringing them in the lockup. It was just, you know, remember what you have today, and just honor that. And that was probably the best advice I got.
Former Chicago police officer and now producer of the 12-year plus running drama Chicago PD on NBC, Brian Luce is joining me. We're going to take a quick time out, and we'll be back right after this. All right, Brian, how was my guest tonight? Brian Luce, producer of Chicago PD on NBC, former Chicago Police Department officer, District 12, Cook County Fugitive Apprehension Unit, TAC officer, organized crime. You said he's done it in his 26-and-a-half-year career. Great conversation so far. Hope you're enjoying it. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and enjoy the shows that we're bringing you here on Behind the Mic. I'm your host, Gary Zahara. Okay, Brian, we went into the law enforcement career. You talked a lot about it. Great information there, but you took a leave of absence, which led to obviously your life-changing career change. What led you to leave, and how did the Chicago PD fall in your lap?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was with the DEA on the task force for about 2 years, and I came back to work long-term drugs again, dope, blah, blah, blah. On our days off, you could put in for what they call the film detail with the Chicago Police Department, when you go and basically block traffic. You know, so I was a traffic blocker.
Okay.
And I was working on a set of Shameless, and one of the guys come up and asked me a cop question, and I couldn't believe they didn't have like a technical advisor or anybody. I didn't want to step on any toes, but he asked me, would you do this? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. That's not what the fucking police would do. I have no idea what you're doing, but no disrespect. I'm just a guy blocking traffic. I got a few hours and I'm going to get out of here. And they're like, well, what would you say? What would you do? And I basically broke it down. You know, he's a cop who's arriving on the scene. He's going to give out a 19 Paul and duke the job out to the detective. And the guy said, well, could you say it? I said, yeah, I could say it. I could fucking say it every day. You know, this is easy. Like, He goes, well, we're going to have you pull up in a squad car and you jump out. And sure enough, I pulled up in a squad car and jumped out 6 times. And Macy, or whatever his name is, the main guy, was just busting my balls. They had it the first take. Next thing you know, I was on Shameless. So I thought it was pretty cool. And I was talking to a bunch of guys. There were some people doing shorts out of Columbia College and working the movie detail. They had like a cop robbery scene, this and that. And I jumped in and I helped them how to hold a gun and how the cops would show up. And this is what we'd really do. And this is what we really wouldn't do, and this is how you make it look a little bit better. And it was awesome. You know, I was like, wow, there's a whole new world. You know, there's grips and there's electricians and there's this chaos that's going on in this energy. And the problem is that most of the people in Chicago have no idea about the circus. They don't know about the world of in the industry. It wasn't here. You know, Dick Wolf brought these 3 shows, and what is it, about 900,000 people are working on them that are in the industry that were depending on commercials and small movies or indie movies or big movies. And, you know, you didn't have much work. All the people in my neighborhood, nobody worked in the industry. No one held a camera. No one put a light up. No one talked to the writers. No one did anything. I was like, man, I want to get in here because maybe I could push some of my people in, or even my kids, and show them how wonderful this is. Like, we're creating, you know? So I went from Shameless, I got fortunate enough to work for a guy by the name of Frank Gross, who was the commander of special functions at the time, I believe it was called. It's the movie detail. And we worked for Michael Bay, who is batshit fucking crazy and a wonderful guy who screams all day long, but is brilliant, you know? And he pulled up the first day. He was in a Lincoln town car, and his driver, and it was on Wacker in Michigan. And I told him, buddy, you gotta pull that car out of here. He says, you know who I'm driving? I said, I don't give a fuck, you're driving the Pope. This is Michigan, and you see this says Chicago police. I run this, I told him. And out walked Michael Bay. And Michael Bay turns, grabs a horn. He says, can you have this meter made? Please get away from me. He says it to my commander. So I figure, okay, that's my last day. He walks over to my commander. Next thing you know, I'm assigned to him for the next 20 days. Like, he liked me, I guess, you know. And I was right there while they were filming everything. And I got to work with all the firemen, Larry Bracken, Roy Dean, all the Chicago cops, Jimmy Curry, like legendary cops that have been on the job for 30 plus years, you know, I mean, old school guys. And it was great for our city. You know, Michael Bay was blowing up Michigan Avenue, Balboa, Trump Towers, everywhere. There was explosions going off. And I just had this energy going through me that I never wanted to go home. I remember I worked 19 hours because they forgot about me in the war wagon where they kept all the explosions. And one of the locations guys came over and says, well, why didn't you go home? I said, well, first of all, I don't want to. And number 2, because no one told me to. And I'm on double secret overtime. You know, no crime solved till overtime. I was making a shit ton of money. Me and Jimmy Curry set up a makeshift little, we had a basket, an old door, and we were eating pizza in the middle of the alley with rats the size of fucking kangaroos hopping past us, and we didn't give a shit. You know, it was, I don't want to say the cop's name, but like every day we would have fun with the citizens, let's just say, you know, like we were like the information police while you're downtown. And the cop, some people come up, can you give me directions to like the train station? I don't have a fucking clue where the train station is. I work in narcotics, you know, and I'm downtown in my dress blues. I'm ready to kill myself. It's 112 out. You know, you're sweating in places you're not proud of. You know, Gold Bond is your best fucking friend, like that kind of deal. And I remember my friend was smoking a cigarette in uniform. He's puffing away. I don't want to say his name because he's still on the job. And this old woman come up to him and says, hey, sir, you're not supposed to be smoking in uniform. And the officer just leaned to her and says, you know, my grandmother lived till she was 95. And the old lady said, smoking? And he said, no, ma'am, minding her own fucking business. And I covered my nameplate, Lucci, my badge number, and I got the fuck out of there. But it was just like, that was the kind of day you'd have. You know, you just had fun. The kids came by. We had a hot set. No one was supposed to go on it. So me and Jimmy, 20 hours were assigned to this hot set, and there's spent brass, and we had all these machine guns, and they were doing a plate shot or something. No one could go in there. Yeah. When the kids would come by, we'd sneak them on set and let them steal the little rounds that were already exploded. You know, we'd sign stuff for them. And it's just, being the police, having that, you know, that back pass, you know, that pass to wherever and lighting up these kids' lives was like, I just fell in love with it, and that's kind of what happened with PD. PD came and people fell in love. We had all these awesome cast members and people that are larger than life, and you're right there in the front row. And every day that we go film, I try to like grab a citizen or somebody and bring them up and let them feel it, get a little taste of it and feel it. Like we have the village, and the village is sacred. That's where only the director is, the producer, the tech advisor, and the scriptie. You can't go in there unless you're invited. So I'll bring someone, I'll put a headset on, and you see it in real life, the shit happening, shots fired, and blah, blah, blah. And it's all around you in the noise, and you have the cans on, and you're listening. And it's just amazing, So I went from being a regular Chicago cop, working in narcotics, and hey, I love this. Talked to a guy and got on a wire team because the wire team allowed me to work midnights and do both. So I was working, you're not going to believe it, but I was working 10 hours on one job and 12 hours on the other one. And when I tell you my spot to go like brush my teeth was like Target at 40th and Pulaski. I'd drive my covert car over, I'd go inside, I'd brush my teeth. And then if on my lunch, I got a 45-minute break, I would sleep in my back of my car and I'd keep going. I did it for 2.5 years. I went through a divorce, horrible, blah, blah, blah. I have 4 wonderful kids that are just incredible. It was a sad time for me because I felt like I failed as a father. I failed as a husband, but the show kind of got me through all that. You didn't have time, you don't have time. You just get out there and you work hard.
Lucha, and your rambunctious pain in the ass growing up, being you getting kicked out of school, and then being a cop, and then being on the set for Chicago PD. I'm sure you've been called a lot of things in your life, but if I look at you, I don't think anybody would want to think of you as a meter maid. Who the hell would say something like that?
Michael Bay said that. Michael Bay.
That's what I don't understand. I'm sure you've been called a lot of stuff, but meter maid does not come into Brian Luce's personality at all. Okay, so you started out as a tech advisor and a script consultant. For fans of Chicago PD and obviously fans of you, explain what that is and why is the vernacular different on Chicago PD than other shows, say like NYPD Blue?
Well, I mean, first of all, the 3 wise men, Olmsted, Haas, and Brandt, who they were so fucking cool, and they'd want to get in your head. They wanted our guys trained to be the real police. They wanted them to look like the real police. And I had a guy, Chuck Barango, who was in SWAT. He died. He was killed. He's a wonderful human being. He was driving his motorcycle and he got hit on Central and just killed. And I brought him in to do a lot of the, long gun training and close quarters and clearing rooms and slicing pies and blah, blah, blah. So basically when I was first there, it was like a 2-week boot camp of driving stunts. Tom Lowe came in and showed him how to drive and tactical driving and this, but moving and shooting and clearing rooms and, collapsing and moving and hot zones and all that shit. That's me and Barango and another guy by the name of A.K. Kariakis, who's off the job now, did a bunch of tours in Kosovo and a few other places, like badass people that I just love. A few other SWAT guys, this kid Ron, they came in and they helped me train unselfishly, and we worked with these cops. The fun part for me and 75% of my job, which people don't even really know, is getting into those scripts. Before an episode is an episode, it's a beat sheet, it's an idea, it's 2 pages. And it's about the crime and the true crime and the character arc and what's going to happen. And ultimately, I'd get in and do notes on that and say, I would do the police shit, and then it would go to what's called an outline. And the outline's 5-6 pages. And I'd get in there and I'd go back and forth with the writers and they'd say, oh, we kick in the door. How did you kick in the door? You got probable cause, reasonable suspicion. There's a thing called burden of proof. How can we kick in the door? If this guy's an offender, we have to prove that. Like, we have a job to do. Did we put him at the scene? Did we not put him at the scene? Like, how are we doing this? How are we earning this story is basically what I'm asking the writer. And the writers, they want to know that. They want to get in front of it. They want to know if there's a problem. The lady who runs our show now is, in all the years that I've been working since I was 13, hustling, is probably one of my favorite bosses in the world. Her name's Gwen Segan. She's phenomenal. She started out as a writer's assistant, and she went from a writer's assistant to a writer to now the showrunner. She's badass. Like, we've had Gwen Segan, Matt Olmsted. We've had some amazing people, but working on the scripts, then the script comes and you got to change the words. Like, we don't use precinct. It's a district, en route, all this other crazy words that these guys try to say. Like, we say offenders, I got 2 on the hood, or I'm coming in with 3. You know what I mean? Like, this is what we say. I have probably a stronger accent than I should, and I probably don't sound as smart as I should, but I'm wicked street smart. So giving them that and telling them this is how I think we could earn it, or here's 3 other versions of this is what we would do. We would not do this. This is what we would do. Like, you can't send 2 cops, send one to the back and one to the front when you're going to do a dynamic entry. It's not going to happen. Or a double breach. We don't do double breaches. You want to fucking point guns at each other's heads? It's not happening.
Right.
So actually, I've created beasts, because they're so well trained and they continue to train. There's a guy, Yashimura, that Tracy Spiridokitis, who left us, Upton, she would train with this guy all the time, like badass. Jesse Lee Sofer would get with these guys for long rifles training and moving and shooting. And this is with their own money, like Ruzick and them. They would continue to train. They'd come back and show me some shit. I'd be like, holy cow. So the tech advising's one thing. This is how you move and shoot. This is how you clear the room. But like Burgess will grab me, Leroyce will grab me, Torres will grab me, Ruzick, all of them. Voight, every day. Voight, how did it feel? Is this what the police would do? Is this what the police? What happened to you? Can you give me anything close to this? There's a female that I worked with in narcotics who was phenomenal, Cynthia Contreras, and she's now a detective with the Chicago Police Department, a Latino lady who was a little prettier than she should be for being on the job. She's
You're going to get in trouble here, Luch. This is Brian right here, folks. Come on.
I'm just saying she's a wonderful woman, but she's gorgeous too. It's hard to be a pretty cop.
I hear you.
Your ass busted from the cops and the bad guys all at the same time. And she came and she talked to a lot of the females and helped me out. Ann Hesh, Ann Hesh was here and wanted to know stuff. And I had her meet with the top female detective who ran the detectives. I don't want to say her name because I don't want any headaches, but these people did ride-alongs and stuff. And they'd come back and they'd say, Luch, you're right. We would never say that. We would never do this. CPD, you got all these codes that a lot of these other cop shows use, 10 this, 10 that. Fuck that. We say, what the fuck? I need help. Send me some cars.
Right.
Give me some people. And we try to keep it as real as possible and as grounded as possible. I like giving them the truth. And if they bend it, they bend it. I get it. It's television. But if we work hard, it could be so good. One of my favorite scenes in the 12 years that I've been there, and I'm there 12 hours a day. My days are 14. I ain't shitting you. Was a scene, and I don't know who wrote it. I think it was Rick Eade. I'm not sure. It was Atwater, the black cop, and Ruzick, the white cop. And there was an offender in the projects, and Ruzick was telling him to get on his knees, and the guy wouldn't go. And that was that part of it. But when they went back to the car's our office, and they talked over the hood, and it was so beautiful how Atwater explained to Ruzick and how Ruzick just didn't get it until he told him how it is to be an African-American and why, as a white officer, you just wouldn't understand. But Ruzick was just really trying to, and I really think it sent a message of kind of what we're trying to do, and who we're trying to be, and how tough it is to be a cop. This ain't fun. So yeah, I was given my heart. I did it for 3 years, and I finally went to a friend and asked, can you help me get a leave? And this friend who works in the city, downtown, I don't want to say who, helped me with that. So they gave me a leave of absence, and before you can get a 1-year leave of absence, but it turned out every 60 days you'd have to go reapply for a 90-day. Well, I did that for about 5 years, and then my friend couldn't help me anymore, and I had to make a decision. It was sad because if I waited till I was 55, but I got full insurance, I had to make a decision. And I was like, this is so important to tell these stories, about these cops. But it's more important to tell the stories about the victims and the offenders. Like, someone was a victim of the domestic. Someone was a victim of a rape. Somebody was a cry-out witness. Somebody was a tender age person, this, that. To tell their story and to know that somebody's sitting on their couch, like really looking at the story going, oh my God, this impacted me and this is why, and you did it right. I felt a responsibility for that. And to be honest with you, I started out, I was only making $20 an hour. So I'd go there and make $160 for the day. I was like, fuck this. I could be the cop for fucking half $100 an hour. Like, what am I doing here?
Right.
Like, this is stupid, And I talked to this one guy, when I first started working there, he'd like to send me home a lot. And the showrunner would call and say, "Where you at, Luch?" And I said, "Well, I'm back in my police car. I'm doing police shit. The guy told me to go home. I got $40 and I left." I go, I can't keep doing this. And he had a talk with that guy. That changed. And then I was there and he wanted me on set all the time. So I went from a technical advisor to what they call an associate producer, whatever that is. I can't even spell it. Don't give a shit because I don't even have that on my chair. You know, like everyone wants the title. Fuck the title. So I go from associate producer to consulting producer. Don't know what the fuck that is. I guess I'm consulting. I don't know. I guess it just, they say stay in your lane. It starts to open up the road. You own the lanes. Like you're helping out set deck. This is what the crack house would look like. You're talking with the costume department. No, our guy would look like this. If the guy's coming in from Mexico and he's a boss, he's got the ostrich boots on and the belt and he's this. So you have all these people that you're talking to in this magical world. So I did that for a few years, and then lo and behold, the big guys in LA says, "Let's make him a producer," and I became a producer, and like they took very good care of me. And I said, I got to walk away from the police department. It broke my heart. It fucking broke my heart. I thought that I would be able to stay with it. Every cop car that goes by, I'm like, I'm sad. I want to be part of it. When I hear the lights inside, I want to jump in. You know, it's just me. You know, I don't know. I don't want to say too much, but
was that part of your feeling when you were in some scenes? Because I saw you in some SWAT outfits and your PD outfits in some scenes on Chicago PD. Was that you just still getting a little taste of being that Chicago police officer?
it was awesome. You get jumping back in there, you know, whether I was in jeans or polyesters or the fucking BDUs, it didn't make a difference. Most of the time, you never know it's me unless I showed it.
Right.
You know, I'm in the background playing with them, and I'd be coaching as we go or directing as we go for the tactical scenes.
Or you're on the radio calling 5021 David or something like that, or you're So I always hear your voice. You're always doing the voiceovers. So
I love the radio, you know, 5021 shots fired, you know,
Yep.
call for help, 10-1, man down,
Yep.
and pumping them up. You know, I remember there was a director that showed up he did like 2-3 days, and he was very excited. God bless him. He's a wonderful person. And he'd go, "Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. It was great, great, great." And Jason Begay came up to me one time, and he's always teaching me. He's always making me a better man. He's like, "Try to stay in the tone of the actors. Respect the actors. Like if they're in this tone, you stay in this tone." And it was a good lesson. So when I'm in there, I stay at that tone. Like if we're moving and grooving, keep your head down. Move as one. Let's go. Let's go. Like there's a guy behind that door. Tomorrow's not promised. That's a fatal funnel. That's a vertical tunnel. You got to keep going. Keep your head up. You know. And I talk and I swear and I'm yelling at him, and that's kind of beautiful. You know that you could stay in there with him. So you know, I mean, when I came on a job, 20-something years is going to make you a little bit hardened. You're going to be calloused. You're not going to be the person that you really want to be. You don't trust anybody. You're cynical. I'd say the industry has softened me in a good way and made me a better person, you know, and the people that are around me taught me to be a better human being, which I needed to be. But, you know, being able to work on the scripts, being able to work with every department, being able to work right there with the actors who 100% trust you. You know, I told them for day one, if it looks like shit, I'm gonna tell you it looks like shit. You know, in my phone right now, no one's by their real name. It's Voight, Burgess, Rusnick, Atwater. That's how it is.
Right.
That's how it's been for 12 years because I'm on the team behind the scenes. I'm with you on the team. I'm working this fucking case. And if you miss something, I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna hand you your fucking ass. You missed that. You walked that corner. You didn't check that corner. If you don't give a fuck about yourself, then at least care about the guy who's behind you because he's got a family. So at least protect him. Get your head out of your ass and get back in the fucking game. And they did it. And they worked hard. And they know when they did something wrong. You know, we got this new cop on the show, Cook. She's phenomenal. Her dad's a Chicago detective, or was a Chicago detective who retired. So she's born and raised there. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, it goes back to the Atwater days when Atwater was just a young kid 12 years ago, you know, big-eyed kid. And I'd be messing with him in his patrol uniform and like working with him and scaring him and trying to get him like, hey, watch your gun, take his gun from him and all this other shit. We almost lost him. He was going to HBO. He was going to Ballers or some dumb shit.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
I grabbed him by the neck and I said, listen, I was just in LA. And I talked to those guys and I said, one of the clearest depiction of Chicago, one of the truest is you. You scream Chicago. You got to be part of this. And he's from Harvey, but he's Chicago. You know, I remember being out with him at 4 a.m, making bad decisions, eating pancakes after too many fucking cocktails, the stupid soup in us, and both of us crying. You know what I mean? Because he made it. You know, he made it, and he takes care of his family. You got Patty, who's from the Midwest. He's a Midwestern. You know, he's got a fucking farm. This
Mm-hmm.
kid's from a farm. You
Yep.
know, the Fugger farm, and he's on another level this year. He's on another level, like his acting and his stuff. I mean, I cry every day. I miss my Jesse and I miss Tracy. You know, I miss them both. Upton and Halston were the shit. Halston moved on, did some FBI stuff, left me like a dog, but it is what it is. You know, Antonio Olinsky, one of the greatest characters of Chicago PD, the sweetheart of a man. He he was, man, he studied and he worked and he wanted to be. I'll tell you a quick story, and I know I talk too fast and a lot, but when my father died, I got his badge holder. It's a leather badge holder that he had for 22 years that he wore, and it was soft as a fucking baby duck's ass. It was awesome. And Olinsky was all about his charms and his stuff. And I said, Olinsky, I want you to wear this. I want my father to be part of the show. And he held it in his hand as delicate as he could, and he felt it. And he put his badge on it. And he wore it to the day they killed him. And when he died, he had to give it back. And Voight was there when he gave it back. And Voight said, I want to wear it. And Voight wears it to this day. And I just feel like it keeps my father alive. It's his spirit. You know what I mean? It's kind of badass. We're here in Chicago. We're doing this in Chicago. You know, and everyone wants to say, oh, you guys got problems. Is there violence? Man, it's a beautiful fucking city. And we're trying. Every city got problems. But this city is a great place. It's a great place to raise kids. It's a great place to live. It's amazing. And Dick Wolf's given us the opportunity for all of us to work here. Like the industry's, everyone's hurt. Nobody got jobs. We got 3 shows going 7 days a week, rocking and rolling, 22 episodes. You know, it's amazing.
And raw and unfiltered conversation with Brian Luce, producer of the hit drama Chicago PD on NBC here in Chicago. Gary Zahara, your host here on Behind the Mic. Luch, as we're rolling along here, love the stories. I think people are going to actually love this interview. That's why I wanted to have you on. How much do the writers use your real life experiences in each season?
As much as they can, you know, rip from the headlines. I mean, you can't use a real story or you get in trouble, but like they investigate, they're out there, they're working. You know, the dope cases, they're doing their research. What's fun is like, I got this guy, Will Slevar, who was a homicide detective for 30 years, who ended up working for IRT, which is the incident response team. He's the guy who investigates the actions of a policeman if they have to use deadly force. Phenomenal cop, legend on the job. And he shits platinum when he talks, is what I say. It's the stuff that comes out of his mouth. If you're a writer, you're sucking it up. You're throwing it on the paper. It's becoming words. So he tells real life stories of homicides and cases that we work, and then they do what they do, and they become stories. You can't use the real victims. You can't do any of that stuff, but a lot of the stories are real stuff that really happened. Like there's burglary crews that worked in my neighborhood for years, you know, 7-8 man burglary crews. And one of the guys that I introduced one of the writers to, I said, yeah, this is such and such cut the hole. Cut the hole. Is he an Indian guy? I said, no, he cut the hole. He cuts the hole on a second story. He's a second story man. He goes inside, he breaks the safe. You know, Mickey Gargoni was the guy, they called him the gorilla. He was an awesome guy. He was a burglar for a long time. They're a friend of mine, you know, they're a friend of a lot of people. He just went to jail for a little bit. He had a little time out. And they talk to these people and they try to get it right. You got MEs, state's attorneys, like I said, judges, everybody just trying to give, this is a story that I had. I think maybe you guys would enjoy it or maybe hear from it. And then they grow from there. Like we got a great writing staff, you know, across the board, all 3 of them. When fire's got a bump and they got some kind of cop question, they give me a call. If I can't answer it, like I said, I'm rich in friendship. I'm picking up the phone. Hey, what would you guys do with this? And boom, they start rattling. And do you mind if I put you on a 3-way? I'm talking to a guy in LA. Fuck, I'd love to, you know. And they just get all that information as true as they can. So yeah, a lot of it ripped from the headlines, real stories, bent, twisted and turned. You know, right now, human trafficking is in big, narcotics is in big, the border and everything else. I mean, there's some things you got to stay away from, but there's some things you embrace.
21st district, based out of the old Maxwell Street station where Hill Street Blues was as well. Did you want to pay a little homage to Hill Street Blues there? Is there anything in the outside that maybe you want to have people remember that show
So
back in the day?
the secret to that is when the three wise men were here researching, they wanted to find a district. I brought them to the old Monroe district where we actually filmed part of the episodic pilot. That's my old district where I used to play poker in the back lockup room when nobody knew. You know what I mean? When you had to be a lockup keeper, you were fighting roaches and bad guys, and the roaches were a little tougher. Yeah, there were some great stories out of 12th district, but ironically, I brought them over to where the old intelligence used to be. The Chicago Police Intelligence used to work out of where you just said, which is now ran by the UIC. Al Capone was in that fucking basement. You know, there was bookies and wise guys and cartage stuff guys and leg breakers and whatever you want to say. They worked in the Bureau of Organized Crime. Those guys in the Bureau of Organized Crime for organized crime, Joe LeCown, all these Joe LeCown guys, all the rest of them. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to say too many names, but every one of them has been in and out of there.
You know, Brian, if I can recall, I think there's the UIC sports field right next to the station, correct? And they build, some sports facilities over there. Yeah.
Which is hurting us, to be honest. Back in the day, I mean, it was prejudicially named, maybe, I don't know. They called it Jewtown. You know, it was Jewtown, was Maxwell Street.
Right.
If somebody robbed your fucking garage, you went there and you got your shit back, you know, at a price, you know, you paid. They had every tool you needed, every bike, every car doors, you named it, tires. There's a lady, Rosie, down there. There was prostitutes. Like, it was the place to be. Jim, what's that, the place for the greasy cheeseburgers? What's the name of the joint on the corner there? Jim's?
On Maxwell's, you know what? Yeah. Jimmy's used to be on Grand and Pulaski. That's a great place. But greasy God. Oh.
That hot dog joint, that guy used to take care of the police.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good. He wore a gun all the time in a big night, right?
Jimmy, Grand and Pulaski, and if you ask for ketchup on your hot dog or your Polish, you throw your shit on the floor. He would be pissed off at you until you get the hell out of it. So.
Fucking great fries.
Been going there since my dad took me first there, 1977. He passed in 2017, but it was like a yearly thing. We would go there. Jimmy's on Grand and Pulaski. Best fries in Chicago. Fight me on that. So,
dude. I was at Valet Parker for 10 years at Tefano's, 1073 West Vernon Park. Joey DeBone owns it. Everybody knows it's all. It looks like there's no sign on it. It's an old mobster joint, whatever the fuck you want to say. I park cars there, and I made a ton of money. Like, guys would be duping you. I remember when this guy, I could say it, whatever, Frankie, the German, they called him, Frankie Schweiss would pull up. This is before he was the police.
Frankie the German Schweiss, yes.
The German Schweiss. He supposedly did like 22 murders or something. None of my business. He would pull up. There'd be 3G guys following him. FBI would be all over him. That's when Racine went through and Monroe went, and I'd watch. And he'd pull up in an F1. He'd pull up in a 500 Mercedes. He'd give me $20. Don't let anyone in the car. And he'd walk in. And it was just crazy. You know what I mean? Like, this world that I lived in. I forgot why I was telling you about Tefano's, but that's why. So while I was parking cars there, Jimmy would come. And he'd bring a box of hot dogs from his joint, like 40 hot dogs. Everyone in the restaurant would be like, fuck the spaghetti. We're having these hot dogs. You know, we'd be fighting over them. I become a cop, don't know about his joint. I walk into his joint in uniform, and I'm like, I know you. He's looking at me kind of mean. He's like a Shriner or something. You know, he's got a gun on him. You don't know me. I said, buddy, I know you. I've ate fucking 100 of your hot dogs. And then I told him it's from Tefano's. That guy's, that bald-headed man, he was a beautiful person. In 12 years on the show, Luch, you build a lot of relationships, especially with the cast. You talked about Jesse Lesofer. I thought maybe you were closer to him, but when you mentioned Jason Begay, that you and him are super tight, it's Jesse, Jason. Talk about those relationships with these guys, and I'll tell you some things what PJ and Leroy said about you. But as far as relationships with the cast, Marina, Tracy, Jason, Benji, and some of the past stars, talk about how those relationships have made you feel. Well, all of them. You know what I mean? I'm actually very, very close with all of them. When we smoked, me and Jason would go out and smoke all the time. You know, we'd smoke a pack a day outside. So we had more conversations than I want to admit to.
Did you and Jason switch from cigarettes to the vapes now? Because I remember doing this scene in the Door County scene. Remember when the guy was killing the children and I was a sheriff? I walked up when he was doing his flavored vapes. Is that what you guys are doing now, vapes?
We quit everything.
Okay.
I can't believe it. Yeah, I quit smoking last Thanksgiving. He quit way before me. He's in the greatest shape ever. I was at his house on Saturday. I went over. His son was with me today watching the Bears game. I brought him over to the club. I was hanging out with
I
one of
can't
his.
believe you wasted your time watching that shit.
Yeah, I know. It is what it is. Yeah. So we, it's not just the cast though, too. I mean, like Mark Tinker, whose dad was Grant Tinker, like who ran NBC back in the day. He was married to Mary Tyler Moore, was the first guy I worked with, and he was back in the day with NYPD Blue. He was my first boss. Like he took me under his wing, and he actually flew to Belize and married me and my wife. My wife's a costume designer. She's working right now for Dick Wolf's son, Elliot, out in LA. If the show gets picked up, she was out there for 6 months, I believe, working with Anastasia, who's one of our big bosses. So my wife fell in love with Tinker, and so did I. I mean, for the man to go 3,000 miles and marry us, it was pretty awesome. And then we were fortunate enough to get Eric LaSalle. Eric LaSalle's my dear friend, and what he brought to the show was absolutely incredible. And he was a guy too. Is just he wanted to do what was right. I learned to be a better person with him too. He brought crazy guys like Wendell Pierce, who I love, and Michael T. I mean, Michael T. Like I got him on speed dial. I'm working on some stuff with him, and Michael T. came to my neighborhood, met with my uncle Frankie, who they fell in love, left me like a dog, and them two hung out at a couple fests, But the cast. Jason Begay and me have been partners since day one, absolute partners. I've been a partner off behind the camera, and he's in front of it. And one of the greatest stories I think with him, which was kind of like what made us what it is when I first got hired for the pilot. Jason Begay had a scene on a platform, and Dick Wolf was there, and everybody was there, and Jesse from Chicago Fire was being held hostage, and a man had a gun to his head. And Jason Begay was supposed to walk up, point the weapon, and then fire and shoot the guy. So I'm there, I'm watching the gun handle in, seeing what he's going to do. He walks up, and it's like, he comes up, boom, he aims at him, and he shoots him. And everyone's like, it was great. And he looks over at me, and I go, no. And he got mad, and he walked over. What was the matter with it? I said, well, I just didn't believe it. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? And at this time, I'm making $20 so you could keep this fucking job. And I'm a man, so don't fucking yell at me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to be honest with you. You're on screen forever. This is fucking forever. I just don't believe it. So he goes, get in the van. Okay. So we go in the van. He's going to go to his trailer. And he tells me, what didn't you believe? I said, well, you don't have to aim, Jason. You know where that bullet's going. That bad guy you've been tracing for 2 days. You're going to shoot him dead in his fucking head, and you don't have to aim. That gun comes up in one swoop, boom, and you shoot him, and you keep walking at him, and you're ready to put 3 more in that motherfucker. He's a horrible person. And he looks at me. I go, so no, I didn't buy it. And he gets out of his trailer, and he goes inside, and the Teamster turns behind me and goes, you do know you're fired, right? You know this is the last job you're working, right? He goes, they're not going to hire you. I go, I don't give a fuck. I can't wait to go back and be in the real police. This is bullshit. We go back. Jason said he wants another take. Jason starts at the end of the platform, comes up the stairs. He's walking right towards him. One foot, boom, he shoots him. You could hear a mouse shit on tissue. Everybody gets quiet. They yell, cut. He looks over at me. I said, that's the fucking one I was looking for. That was great. And basically we hugged. He was mad, but he hugged me. And it was from that day forward that he knew I wouldn't lie to him. I would not lie to him. I would tell him, this is the absolute truth. This is what we got to do. So those conversations every day after every scene of talking and how could we make it better, or what did we miss? Did we get the gravy off the plate? Is this true? Did we get this? No, we missed this, and that. He'd go back in there and make it happen.
Is that the most important thing for you, Brian, when you first came on, that you talk to the 3 wise men and the people that are in charge, say, listen, if you're going to bring me in, it's got to be this way to make it authentic, because if I'm putting my name on this, I don't want it to look like shit, correct?
Yeah, I couldn't say if you want me. Like I couldn't really. I'd say, listen, I just don't want to be part of it. You know what I mean? Like if you want to do it right, let's do it right. I get it's television, and we're going to bend the truth, but be careful what the fuck you bend. In one act, if there's a lie, maybe you get away with it. In 2 acts, they're looking at you sideways. At 3, they're shutting the fucking television off.
Right.
You know, Chicago code, I worked on it for 2.2 fucking minutes. I was a cop that was following another cop, and the scene was the bad guys were driving, and the bad guy points a gun at the policeman, and the policeman doesn't do anything. He's like, hey, you got to put the gun down. He's like trying to talk to him, acting cool. I said, I'd have lit that motherfucker up. He points a gun at you, he dies. You run for the police, you get caught. You know what I mean? Like you fight with the police, you get beat. You shoot at the police, you get dead. It's real fucking simple. Those are the rules, you know? Don't point a gun at the police. So I was like, what? And I checked out. I don't want to be no part of this. And I was just on a movie detail. That show got canceled because it wasn't real, you know? So when this came, I just was like, can we try to get it right? Can we work to get it right? If the guy points the gun, we're gonna shoot him. We don't want to shoot him. Nobody got up in the morning and says, I want to kill somebody. There's no cop that wants to kill anybody out there. I don't care what the fuck you say. There's bad cops, there's great cops, there's good cops. I get it. Nobody wants to kill anybody. Nobody's fucking looking to kill nobody. So when we'd have scenes where I would tell the director, if he points the gun at my men, they're gonna light him up. That motherfucker's gonna have some holes in him. We can't do that. So we try to make it as real as possible. So yeah, there was that. If it got to the point where it wasn't believable, then no, I didn't want to have any part of it, to be honest with you. So the fight was in the beat sheet. The fight was in the outline. The fight was in the script, you know, and it was just, I understand it's television. I get that, and all the writers have always been respectful to that, you know, and Chick Rodas would say the same thing. Chick would be like, here's the truth. This is what happens. You know, I hope to God we can have most of that, you know, like if it's a pizza, give me 8 slices of that motherfucker. Keep the 2, you know, but so yeah, I if it was bullshit, I wouldn't be part of it, you know, to be honest with you.
PJ Fluger, who plays Adam Ruzek on the show, had him on, and he talks about, I'm fortunate enough to work a couple of scenes with him, and he was really cool. He walked out during a break. He sat there and talked to me. Usually, you know, they give us the instructions, don't talk to the cast, don't do this, don't approach them. PJ was very friendly, and that's the reason why I kept a relationship with him for a couple of years and came on the show. But when we talked about you, he was a little apprehensive to talk about your health, but he said, you know, he's doing better. He talks about you being the heartbeat of the show and a hero of his. How does that make you feel?
I mean, make you want to cry. You know what I mean? He's a big kid. At the end of the day, he's just a big kid. But he's a big kid with a big responsibility. You know, who he's playing and how people are looking at him and how he's perceived. And sometimes you got to be the bad guy, and sometimes you got to be the good guy. You know, they did that episode 2. I was dead when they did episode 2, but prior to doing episode 2, I talked to him. That episode 2 is basically a story that happened to me. I was working with a guy from Canaryville who's a copper. His name's John Pickett. We were working violence reduction initiative. He said to me as soon as he got in the car, please, man, don't let us get in any trouble. And I said, you know, I'm a shit magnet. We're going to get in trouble. That was the last day he worked as a Chicago policeman. He was catastrophic. He was never able to work again. We came across this guy, a state trooper by the name of Lamar Horton, really cool guy. He was out there working. They had an Amber Alert out for a young kid who the father was going to kill, and they were pinging a phone, which is just like that episode. And it just, all the little pieces came into place. Ultimately, we ended up, John Pickett, we spotted the offender in the car and the young kid, and we approached the car, and John ran to the front of the car, and the man purposely ran him over. He tried to kill John Pickett. And John was thrown up in the air about 20 feet, landed in the middle of Roosevelt Street, gun went flying, shattered his leg, pins and everything in there, but it's called. The man who was in the car was still alive. He reached underneath the seat. I thought he was reaching for a gun. I pointed my weapon at him. Don't you move, don't you move. And I looked, I seen a young kid, who's 2-year-old kid in the back seat. So ultimately I had to run around, keep my gun on the father who was going to kill the kid. And I was scared to death. Bottom line, I was scared to death. And when you take off a baby seat, you need both hands. So I had to relinquish my weapon to do that. And the whole time I was praying to God, please God, don't let him shoot this kid. Please don't let me shoot this kid. And I got the strap off and I grabbed the kid and I come back around and I pointed the gun, don't you move, while my partner's laying in the street, while the state trooper's pulling up. Somebody called a 10-1 officer down, shots fired. Ultimately, blah, blah, blah. A guy by the name of Holy, a detective, showed up and he knew that I was on high alert. Luch, you're good, let's go. And I wouldn't let go. And I was afraid because I felt wetness with the baby and I thought the baby was shot. And long story short, another sergeant came, gave the baby, and while it was all over, I sat on the curb and I was white as a ghost. And cop come up, guy gave me a cigarette, let me get you a coffee. Someone ran to Dunkin' Donuts, and I sat there on the curb. And it reminded me of the hundreds of incidents that I pulled up, and I've seen that cop sit on the curb after something horrible happened, if they had to shoot at somebody, or somebody got shot, or they lost a partner, or a kid died in their arms, or someone had a heart attack, or blah blah blah. And I told Patty, because he does his homework, this is just what happened to me. It doesn't mean it's right, but that curb is your park bench. That curb is the copper's park bench. Like, that's where, when you pull up, you see a guy at the curb, and he played that, like, in the show. And that's just one little segment of every time he's got an episode, and every time these actors have an episode, they dive in, like, not only to me, but all the policemen that I've introduced him to try to get it right. How did it affect you? If you were a cry out witness with a young kid who was sexually assaulted, like, I had one of those in my career, and I still want to cry, but here's guys that worked on that. So I have people that worked in SVU, and they've seen horrible things that'll just keep you up at night, but they're able to share those things with these guys. So yes, being vulnerable and being a partner with Jason Begay and Leroyce Hawkins and Ruzik and Jesse and Marina and Tracy, you start to become one, because you share these secrets that you're afraid to share with anybody else, not even your spouse. Like, I don't tell my kids this shit, but for some reason you're able to. It's like therapy, and you tell them, and you become close. And I probably cried 100 times with them and laughed 1,000. This job, I kid, I go, I can't believe I'm making this much fucking money. Like, I whistle to work, I laugh all day, and I'm smiling on the way home, and you're surrounded by great people that care. And if they didn't care, they'd fucking phone it in, and they're not phoning it in.
Leroyce Hawkins, who plays Atwater on Chicago PD, talked to me and said that you were his powerful liaison when you talked about him maybe going to Ballers. And he said if it wasn't for you and being able to sit down and talk to the people in LA and maybe the three wise men and the people here in Chicago, saying that you could relate to him, all of his experiences of him dealing with the police in Harvey, since you worked in Inglewood and everything. And he said that you sitting down and talking to him made him want to stay, and he's very thankful of that. Talk about that connection.
When he came, he's a deer in headlights. He's super smart. He's one of the most talented guys we have, like acting, poems, writing, this and that. He does drug seminars with me at De La Salle and a bunch of other schools, and he does it at the club in my neighborhood where they bring in all the kids, and he comes and teaches them. But when I first met him, like, I fell in love with him. I'm not gonna lie. He was this cute, big, huge man who just has this heart of gold. Who you could see that probably some of the run-ins he had with the police weren't the greatest. A depiction of that is, remember the movie Straight Outta Compton?
Yes.
And the cops were just the cops. They throw you on the hood and this and that. I'm sure Atwater's had plenty of those. And I was trying to show him that, like, not every cop out there is this way. There's some great cops out there that want to help. They want to treat you right. And he was hell bent. He was, for him to turn down Ballers, they killed him in the first episode because he turned it down. Like, I don't know how much persuasion I had, but I told the three wise men, I said, listen, guys, you're asking me about this full cast that's there right now. And, people are going to go and they're going to come. And I don't know much about this, but I'm telling you, that kid right there, that's Chicago. He screams Chicago. I just love him. And he's from Harvey, and he's seen things that he could teach us to be better people and tell us about policing. And I think he's going to be able to do that if you just keep him. And of course, it's way above my pay grade. I would never be able to pick it, but I told him, please, I love this kid. Voight was Voight. You're going to keep Voight. And John Seda, prince of a man, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, wonderful. They're keeping John. Like, John is an incredible actor, he always been. But Atwater, I think he was on the fence. And I kind of chopped down that fucking fence and said, please keep him. I will work with this kid. I'll make him into something, but he's already something, but I think we need to hear from his side. And they have, and he's an intricate part of the show.
And up until this season, with the new officer Cook that came in, was it harder or easier to write for Atwater because he was black and he was the only black officer on the intelligence unit?
I mean, different cultures and not knowing and, saying different things and not that perspective. I'm sure that's tough for anyone. And you got a 50-year-old white writer who's writing for an African American who's 27, 30 years old.
Right.
You're gonna have a fucking problem. You know what I mean? We, I think we get it as right as we can for being the police, and we have conversations like, what's your perspective? What's your view of this? What's your POV? And being able to get that before it hits the paper, before it comes a script, is they collaborate a lot. I wish more, but the writers are the writers, and they make the show amazing, and they try to get into the heart of everybody. But yeah, that's difficult. I'm lucky because when I was in the jail, I was like one white guy out of 20 African American guys. So I kind of hung with a lot of guys that I felt comfortable with. So lucky to be part of that. And it basically, at the end of the day, when I got on the job, I had a lot of African American partners too that I loved and had a good time with. So I kind of know the language, and I would talk to Leroyce, and I'd be like, Leroyce, you wouldn't say that, would you? And he'd be like, Luch, in a million years, I wouldn't say that shit. You know what I mean? So I'd give him a note, or we'd try to get it close, and then we go from there. So yeah, that's a difficult thing to do. You know what I mean? It's very hard. Do we shoot at 50%? Probably. Could we do better? Yeah, probably. We've had a couple of really good African American writers. Ike Smith was on the show, who had the language, the culture. He wrote phenomenally. I thought was really, really good. We have a lady on there now. Tiffany. She's amazing. So Arthur Fournier, who's our editor, who's like the number 3 man in the Wolf films, African American. He called the bullshit flag when he'd see something, but we were fortunate also to get Eric Lassell. Eric Lassell, if it didn't sound right, he'd say, nah, we wouldn't say this. And we'd get it right, from Eric.
Do you have a favorite episode that stands out?
Not really. You know what I mean? All of them are kind of, they all kind of hit you in a certain way. You know what I mean? Like there've been so many of them that I feel like we did right that I don't really have one. You know what I mean? They're just moments, I guess you'd say. After 230 episodes, you have moments, that you remember, like the one I told you about Atwater and Ruzick. The Michaela, seeing Michaela and Ruzick, like with Michaela, is like very touching. Voight, the way Voight has evolved and turned into a different kind of copper, which I love. I hated when we lost Olinsky. I cried. I left. I sat in my car. I cried. I just thought, a piece of me died that day. My father died that day. I think there were some really tough ones that we did with kids that are incredibly hard to do. We had a script supervisor who was a dear friend of mine who lost her son to violence, and we did a couple episodes where people were getting shot, and being there and her going through that was tough. There was things like that. There's people that were rape victims and this and that, so sometimes those hit a little too close to home, but this is the show we're doing, and the show will let you take off for those if you need to. They're very, very responsible about that, and they care deeply about, people who have been infected by violence or things like this. So there's some that I didn't like just because they were so true, but they needed to be told. But I don't have a favorite, I don't have a favorite. I love them all,
How long do you think this series is going to go?
Well, my daughter's going to college for 4 years. She's a senior right now at Merritt. So I'm praying to God for at least 4 more years.
Okay.
After DVRs and stuff, 7 days, like we're at 9 o'clock. It's a tough spot. Television is different now. 2, 5, 7, 9, whatever. Your regular network television is different. The way they do things with all the streaming shit, like it's tough to gauge it. I mean, I pray we go as long as SVU. Law and Order. I pray that we could keep going.
You
We're like,
guys have been in the top 15, Luch, since 2015. You guys have been in the top 15 as far as viewership. As I looked up some stats. Yeah. So,
well,
I mean,
7-day DVRs, we're like number 1, number 2 on television.
yeah.
Like we're fucking rocking and rolling. Like people aren't watching it at 9 o'clock at night. They're tired. But then within 3 days or 5 days or 7 days, they're jumping on and they love our show. I mean, if you see like on Instagrams, I like to mess around or I'll post stuff. I haven't posted stuff in a minute, but I'm going to be back on there. We get people like from like Budapest, you know what I mean? Like Spain, Ireland, Brazil is huge. Like these people out of country, London, all across the world, they're like huge fans of the show, and I'm like blown away. I remember I went on vacation and the TSA was like looking at me, and I'm thinking, this guy got to think I'm like sneaking in dope. Like, what is this guy's gonna? I always get the double search because I'm a cop. So when I'm walking through, I'm looking around. They think I'm looking around being a bad guy, but I'm looking for bad guys. So I always get that extra finger, if you know what I mean. So I go to the secondary search, and the guy's looking at me, and I'm looking at the guy. He goes, "You're Lucci." And I go, "Yeah, my name's on the ticket. I'm sorry, did I do something?" "You're on Chicago PD." And I was like, so I got the extra finger for being on Chicago PD. How do you like that? We're about to get real close, me and you. So it's amazing how far it reaches. You know, it reaches so far. And people send mail into the office, and they send things in like how we've affected their life, how we changed their life, or how we do things. And you're like, oh my God, it's like so profound that we are touching these people. And it's big, it's huge. So I mean, I pray. Would I love 10 years? Would I kiss an angel if it was 5? You know what I mean? Yeah, I would. God, I hope so.
Producer, Chicago PD on NBC. Brian Luce, my guest. Also, he is a former Chicago police officer, Cook County Sheriff. He's done it all, 26 and a half years. Great, raw, unfiltered conversation. We hope you enjoyed it. Our final segment called In a Word. Luce, I know this might be tough for you because you like to talk in a word. I'm going to give you some people, places, some phrases. If you can answer it in a word, fine. If not, answer it the way Brian Luce would answer it. Okay, bud? Here we go. Here we go.
Suck at this.
Here we go. Brian Luce, in a word, growing up in Bridgeport.
Oh, fuck. Family.
1 for 1. Here we go. Your dad.
Hero.
In a word with Brian Luce, being a cop in Chicago, Brian.
Loved it. That's 2.
Well, no, you know what? You're close. He said loved it. So we'll give him a pass on that one. In a word, your family.
Everything.
Final question. This is a softball question. I'm sure you can answer it. Your Chicago PD family.
New life.
There you go, man. See how easy that was?
That was 2 words.
Yeah, it wasn't a 5-minute production of in a word. Brian, continued success, my man. Thanks for coming on and thanks for giving me some time. Thanks for being good to me when I interrupting you on your lunch break when you're having a meeting. I think you were doing a production meeting at the district garage over there. So thanks for being cool to me. Glad you're healthy. Keep continued good health, and hopefully I'll be on set with you to see you and maybe rush a house sometime soon.
Come on in and kick a door with us. We'll have a good time.
Oh, you know what? Here, talk about real quick before you leave. You got the Turkey Bowl coming up on the 28th. I know everything's set, but talk about that.
So for the last, I think, 13 years, it started out with just about 5 dads and 10 kids, and we had a game, a Turkey Bowl game at Armour Park. It was pretty cool. And the next year, I asked the dads, you got to all give me $100 a piece. We want to buy sweatshirts for the kids. And they did. And the problem was the park wasn't open because it was a holiday. So I had the local bar open up, which was Cork and Carey's, at Cork by the park. The guy's name of that joint is Billy Guidey. And I went up to him without hesitation. I said, "Bill, I got all kinds of dads coming and we're playing football. And we got these kids got a piss. We could only hit the tree so many times." And he's like, "Brian, I'll open up for you. We'll make Bloody Marys." And that first time I had like 20, 30 people in there drinking. And then the next year, 50, and then 100, and then 200. So it has grown so much. I have a local guy by the name of Michael Tadden, who's a guy from the neighborhood who loves the neighborhood and gives back. who gives me a huge sponsorship. And this year he bought 1,500 sweatshirts for all the kids in the neighborhood. And you say sweatshirt, oh, that's no big deal. But what the sweatshirt is like that actual connective tissue between these kids. Like I've seen kids in the park and they won't talk to each other, but then you see the turkey bowl sweatshirt on these little kids. And the next thing you know, they have something in common and it brings them together, that unity in the community and to be something proud of. And I've seen the sweatshirts over the last 15 years be hand down generation from different crews of guys. Like my sons grew out of it. So my daughter wore it. She had like 3 or 4 different ones. So the turkey bowl is from 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock on Thanksgiving morning. It's a neighborhood tradition. Everybody throws in $100 a piece. There's 100 names on the back of the sweatshirt, mostly in loving memory of somebody that loved that park at one time. I have a DJ. I got a petting zoo. A rich friend of mine pays for the petting zoo. All the De La Salle comes and they actually pay for all the coffee and hot chocolate. The 2 bars now open up. Tommy Turtle opened up about 5 years ago. Turtles off of 33rd. The neighborhood just lights up with this amazing amount of family. And you laugh about the video that I made on Instagram the day after I came out of the coma. That's the father, the priest who is the chaplain for the Chicago Police Department. I don't know if I should say his name, but he came to like give me a blessing. He comes every year with Father McFarland Bubbles, who's another father. And all the kids that are playing football, they sprinkle with the holy water and we say a prayer. And it's just something that has grown. It's so big now. It's so big, but it's so beautiful. And it's all the people across the board. And it's just something I started with a very dear friend of mine, my dear lady friend. Her name's Diane Barbario, who works. She's got to take care of all the money. Like they got to write checks to her, and local t-shirt places, Big Kahuna, he helps us out. You couldn't believe the people that come out of the woodwork that are still proud to be from Chicago, to be from an inner neighborhood within Chicago, and it's just kind of awesome.
Brian, there's a reason why you weren't taken from us, because you've got this good work to do. And like I said, you're a good man. You're a really nice guy. Thanks for coming on. Continue success. Stay healthy. And I hope to see you at CineSpace and on set pretty soon.
You got it, brother. We'll talk.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it, bud. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Team Keys and your financial services division manager, Whitley Brooks Edmondson, specializing in affordable insurance and investments. Call 248-403-0919 to book your appointment. Slugmaster, turning batters into hitters. Log on to slugmaster.com for a dealer near you.
Great conversation with Brian Luce, producer of Chicago PD, former Chicago cop, Cook County Sheriff. Raw, unfiltered, one of the best conversations I've had, and I've had some great guests on so far on this new podcast, Behind the Mic. You can follow him on Instagram, Brian Luce 000 on Instagram. Watch his videos. He always posts things. He also brings people in the neighborhood when they're on shoots to give him some time and give him some exposure. A really great guy. Glad that he's healthy. Hope you enjoyed the interview. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and keep giving us some good pub here. We hope you enjoy the content that we're bringing you on this show. So for all of us here at Behind the Mic, we thank you for watching. Have a good night.
Behind the Mic has been brought to you by Team Keys and your financial services division manager, Whitley Brooks Edmondson, specializing in affordable insurance and investments. Team Keys, keep elevating yourself. Call 248-403-0919 to book your appointment. And Slugmaster, turning batters into hitters. Log on to slugmaster.com for a dealer near you. Behind the Mic is a Did He Go production, produced by Z-Force Media. Stage manager is Heather Marie. The executive producer of Behind the Mic is Eric Ferguson.